During the quake, I stopped Max from rushing in to save his girl, which ended up breaking my leg. On the day Max and I got hitched, the chick who was scarred took a leap from the building. He kept quiet, and for years, I battled through rehab with my busted leg. On our 10th anniversary, while I was expecting, he shoved me right into the middle of the street. Before he bounced, he asked me, "Ella, have you ever felt so alone and helpless?" As the car ran over me, I realized he'd been hating me all along. When I came to in the collapsed house, I let go of his grip. "Max, run!" As the load-bearing wall gave way, Max firmly released my hand right before my eyes. In my past life, I pulled him back to safety, using my body to shield him from falling walls. When the sharp stones came down, the intense pain knocked me out instantly. I thought I was done for, so with my last bit of strength, I whispered in his ear, "Max, be happy." Later, waking up in the hospital with only half of my right leg, the feeling in my heart was indescribable, realizing I couldn't keep doing what I loved, fencing. In this life, I broke down and cried in despair, but Max's mom came to see me, and they knelt down asking me not to cry, saying only if I stopped would they stand up. That sunny guy, now standing beside me helplessly, wiped away my tears with trembling hands. "Let's get hitched, Ella. I'll take care of you forever." In that moment, the heavy love vibes momentarily smoothed the deep abyss in my heart. I always thought Max's deep gaze towards me was sparked by my love, until the moment the car's tire rolled over my stomach. Then I realized it was pure hatred. "No, I gotta go save Sophie, she hasn't come out yet." Max's loud shout interrupted my thoughts, waving his hands to signal me not to come near him. I looked at his still young and tender face, remembering the good times. I remembered him sticking with me through rehab, holding me tight in his strong arms every time I fell. But I also remembered, on our 10th wedding anniversary, he pushed me onto the road without my prosthetic leg, leaning in and asking me, "Ella, do you remember what day it is?" My Sophie, she's been gone for 10 years now. Though she had agreed to my confession, everything was supposed to get better. Max's voice was full of hatred, like a sharp knife, stabbing deeply into my heart. The speeding wheels rolled over my stomach, staining the pregnancy test in my pocket with bright red blood. It was a surprise I had planned for Max on our 10th anniversary. "Don't come near me." Max turned and ran upstairs, glancing back at me. He thought I would do whatever it takes to stop him, but this time, I wouldn't. After being found by the rescue team, I got into the car. Max and Sophie were nowhere to be found. I didn't know if he had run into her, if he had saved his beloved girl. I closed my eyes, still hearing Max's words from the previous life ringing in my ears. "Life and death are destiny. Why do you think you have the right to mess with my life and death?" "I love Sophie. I'm willing to die for her." "Why are you stopping me?" "Pity the 10 years of childhood friendship between us is nothing compared to Sophie's 1 month with him. Once so ambitious, he skipped an exam just for one sentence from her, missing out on all the awards. He said he had never met someone who suited him like she did. Rescue vehicles took us to the hospital for checks, where I saw Max's mom, her face worn out, and she grabbed my hand. "Where's Max?" I shook my head. "I don't know." "Weren't you two together? How could you not save him?" I was speechless for a moment. In the past life, Max's mom was initially grateful to me, but later she kept bringing up my disability, believing that her son accepting me was my good fortune. She even secretly set up girlfriends for her son more than once. Whenever I got mad, she would pretend to have a heart attack, and Max would stand in front of her to shut me up. He wanted to go save someone. I couldn't stop him. I looked at Max's mom, not wanting to say anything extra. Max lost his dad early on, and his mom raised him alone. Seeing him about to graduate, if something happened to him, I didn't know if Max's mom could handle it. "How could you do this? How could you not stop him? You watched him go to his death. How could you be so cruel?" People gradually gathered around. Max's mom sat on the ground, clutching her chest and crying loudly. "My son talked to her for so many years, took care of her for so long, and now she's on her own, leaving my son behind." A journalist nearby lifted a camera to film me. Some passersby raised their phones wanting to record it. I could even imagine how many misinformed people would say I was heartless once the video spread online. But at that moment, a bloodied stretcher was carried in from the door. Max, who had been sitting on the ground, suddenly pounced forward. It was Max, covered in blood, his bandaged arm clearly showing large areas of flesh and blood. "Are you crazy? Why did you go to save someone? If anything happens to you, how can I live in the future?" She cried in despair, but Max smiled weakly. "I saved Sophie. I saved Sophie. As long as Sophie is safe, I'm down to do anything." The people around had their expressions change. "Sophie? Isn't that another girl? Didn't he talk to her for so long? How come there's another Sophie?" A moral dilemma, huh? Is your son's life more important than others? Seeing the public opinion shifting, Max's mom couldn't even explain. Her face turned white as she collapsed backward, not saying a word. It seemed genuine this time. Medical staff hurried toward them, and I walked into the exam room across the hall, paying no more attention. The test results came back normal. As I left the hospital, I heard about Max. He survived but lost an arm that needed to be amputated. In this twist of fate, he became the one injured, saving the one he loves. I hope Sophie can ride smoothly from now on. Standing outside the ICU, I saw the flashing red light and recalled Sophie's face from my past life. Amidst the chaos, with everyone running out as the walls shook, Sophie held her phone, her voice determined. "Quick, say you love me. Otherwise, I'll die right here." "I won't run, Jake. If you don't promise me, I won't live," she said. I had seen her on and off with that senior from the film department, heard her mocking her friends. "Max, I'm just playing with him. I'm not serious. How would Jake know? It doesn't matter to him." So I wanted to stop Max to help him escape the fate he shouldn't have, even if he had feelings for someone else, even if he ruthlessly pushed me away for someone else. But out of respect for our long friendship and for my own peace of mind, I wanted to pull him out of the mess. But since he was determined to jump in without hesitation, as he said, life and death are predestined. Wealth and honor are in the heavens. Farewell, Max. It's been a month since I last saw him. His right hand, once proud of basketball, has been amputated. His right arm is barely a stump, wrapped in bandages, making it hard for him to move. Max's mom seemed to have aged 10 years, her voice hoarse and almost inaudible. I went to greet him with a bouquet of flowers as he was discharged, calmly telling him that we were breaking up. Max didn't stop me because during his recovery, Sophie had visited many times, crying and expressing her love to him, saying she would be with him for the rest of her life. I think this is a good ending for both of us. After Max left, I sat in his almost empty room for a long time. This was where I stayed in my past life, thinking that Max could save me. Now I understand that the only one who can save me is myself. Just as I was about to look away, expecting to see Max and Sophie loving each other, I saw the petite girl being embraced by Jake, kissing passionately, looking at me. The phone interrupted my observation with a sudden ring. It was my mom calling. As I answered the phone, my eyes never left the scene below. Unaware of what just happened, Max wanted to hug Sophie, but with his missing arm, he struggled to lift it, failing in the end. "Ella, where did you go?" My mom's voice was urgent on the phone. After I broke my leg in the last life, she was devastated, but she never blamed Max. Even after our marriage, she hinted to me a few times, wondering if Max was a good choice. Despite his deep thoughts, Max always appeared gentle to her and to me. I argued with her a few times, asking her not to overthink things. After being reborn, I finally understood that it was intuition, born out of love. If only I had listened to her sooner, things might have turned out differently. "Don't worry, Mom. I've said goodbye to Max." I calmed my tone, but felt a jolt when I lowered my head. Not far away, Jake stood among the flowers, hands in his pockets, looking up at me. When our eyes met, he gave a mischievous smile. He made a hushing gesture with his index finger by his lips, a hint of danger in his gaze, as if warning me not to speak out of turn. It's no surprise that someone like Sophie, with her stunning looks, would attract attention. Even among the beauties in the performing arts department, her captivating gaze, like a galaxy full of stars, had a mesmerizing charm when she looked at people. It was said that several famous directors had already sent scripts to Sophie, but she refused them all, saying she wanted to save her debut work for Jake. Unfortunately, in the last life, things didn't go as planned. Her proud face was scarred in the earthquake, ruining her appearance. At that time, Max, recovering from surgery, went to visit Sophie secretly, but was rejected every time. He always thought Sophie couldn't face him because of her scars, believing she was desperate because I forced him to marry me. Little did he know that on the day Sophie jumped off the building, Jake posted a moment on social media, holding hands with a girl in a sweet picture. After losing a leg in a decade of hardship, I never managed to make up for the regret of Sophie in his heart. He blamed me for all of her troubles, but little did he know that she never really cared about him. Back then, I was almost desperate. Now looking back, I wonder, what is the difference between my so-called infatuation and Max's one-sided wishful thinking? When we returned to school, most of the buildings had been rebuilt. As graduation approached and everyone was sending out resumes in the previous life, Max excelled in all aspects. Standing tall and handsome in the crowd, he quickly caught the attention of the HR people. But now, he could only sit in front of those overlooked small companies, clumsily writing his name with his left hand. Though most companies didn't say much to his face, the pity in their eyes when they looked at Max was more than admiration. I understood the despair of being cold-shouldered back then, and now he was experiencing it to the full. Ella, I'd like to ask you about your attitude towards career and family relationships. The interviewer held my resume, looking at me with interest. Single young women always face some scrutiny in job interviews, and I understood that. I turned my head, memories flashing in my mind, and firmly spoke after a moment. I was born a tall mountain, not a meandering stream. The interviewer was briefly stunned, then smiled warmly and nodded. All right, Ella, one last question. You've applied for the position of wheelchair fencing coach. Can you talk about what that special meaning holds for you? My hand dangling beneath the table brushed against my right knee, gently rotating my ankle. The surprise of regaining what was lost still lingered in my mind. In the previous life, I faced repeated setbacks and grew to loathe fencing, a sport I once loved. Every time I saw my favorite fencing matches on TV, I would go crazy and smash the screen. It wasn't until much later, after my mind had calmed somewhat, that I learned about wheelchair fencing. When I met that female coach, she handed me the sword and said that without legs, as long as I grew wings, I could still fly. Unfortunately, by then, my physical abilities had deteriorated, making it difficult to pick up the dream again. Since I had a chance to start over and understood the pain bestowed upon me, I wanted to share the joy of life with more people. Faster, higher, farther was my determination. I believed that physical limitations should never be a restraint on pursuing dreams. Those were the words the female coach said to me in the previous life, and it was a belated consolation to myself. As the crowd dispersed, I saw Max and Sophie. She stood at his side, particularly eye-catching, her voice coy. Max, don't worry. It's okay not to have a job. I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. Upon hearing this familiar conversation, I chuckled softly. How about I hook you up with a job through someone I know? Not too tiring and with a high salary. I don't need your hookup. I don't believe there's no company that wants me, Sophie. Give me some time. You'll see. Sophie clearly didn't like Max. Her care for him was probably to avoid criticism from others, but a proud man like Max would never tolerate the charity of a girl. Even now, he still believed he had a chance to succeed. But skipping an exam to accompany Sophie to a competition left a glaring stain on his record. Moreover, the process of physical recovery was a long one. Max had already lost the exceptionally high starting point from the previous life, and to reach the same heights again, he would likely have to put in 1,000 times more effort. I walked past them without a glance, but as I passed by, I distinctly heard Max's deliberately amplified voice. Sophie, I'll make you happy. Glancing sideways, I saw him turn and wrap his arm around her waist, his eyes glancing in my direction with a hint of uncertainty. Pretending not to hear, I didn't turn around. But in my mind was that 18-year-old boy standing outside my house all night holding a jar of stars, hesitantly saying to me, Ella, we've been accepted to the same university. Can we be together? I'll make you happy. Closing my eyes, the wispy willow trees and the boy's sweaty white shirt still lingered in my mind. We went to such great lengths to be together, but ultimately, we lost a time. Ella, a sweet voice interrupted my thoughts as Mia bounced over from a distance and threw herself into my arms. For the graduation performance, will you be an actor for me? I had met Mia in the club, a student in the directing department. She came from an affluent family and was eagerly waiting to go abroad for further studies after graduation. At such a young age, without worries, her current headache was just the graduation project for school to shoot a short film. I linked arms with her, nodded, and agreed, perhaps afraid I'd be upset about the breakup. She strategically positioned herself on my right side to block Max and Sophie. Max's mom came to school the other day looking for Sophie, and it was quite fierce. She said something about Sophie being the family's person while alive and the family's ghost in death, and that she should quickly give birth to a grandson for Max. With every word, Mia stole a glance at my expression, as if worried I might be distressed. Mia, Max and I have already split up, and I don't want to hear anything about him anymore. I was at a significant juncture in life, where things more important than so-called love were abundant. I didn't want someone who would never have any connection with me again to interfere with my life. That was my own punishment. In Mia's script, inspired by a headmistress in a remote mountain, I played one of the girls forced to abandon her studies due to pressure to get married. During rehearsals, I only then noticed that we were using Jake's rehearsal space next door, and Sophie played the lead in Jake's script. They two were always together every day, with a hint of ambiguity in their relationship. Almost half of the school's students had heard about it, but due to Jake's background, no one dared to say much. Max had received some positive responses from the companies he applied to, but for some reason, all communication suddenly went silent. He had to accept Sophie's arrangement and got a job through connections at a company with a relatively decent salary, but it also meant that he would have to be subordinate and become the kind of relationship he had always despised. Following my previous life's plot, he should be undergoing rehab therapy now, which was the toughest time after losing a limb, constantly accepting his changes and facing his deepest pain over and over again. Max's emotions began to become unstable, and he needed Sophie's company to fill the void inside him. But Sophie's mind was not focused on him at all. To ensure she looked her best on camera, she needed to sleep and wake up early, maintaining a regular schedule. Maybe because she was immersed in the nourishment of love, she became even more beautiful. During breaks in rehearsals, I often heard her impatiently saying on the phone, "I'm busy, we have a meeting with the drama group tonight, and I don't have time to accompany you." Sometimes when Max occasionally came to see her, she would find an excuse to leave and then instruct the people around her, "Don't tell him I'm here." On Valentine's Day, Max came to see Sophie with flowers, but Sophie was busy rehearsing and didn't even greet him. In front of everyone, Max couldn't help but explode. He angrily threw the flowers to the ground and coldly questioned, "Sophie, I called you so many times and you didn't answer. What are you trying to do?" In the midst of the stunned silence, Sophie did not give in to him. She maintained her composure, her beauty always attracting the attention of boys. She immediately retorted, "Max, I'm busy. Normal people have a lot to do every day, unlike you who have so much free time." She emphasized the words "normal people," clearly hurting Max. He stood there stunned, almost unable to speak. "Sophie, do you have a heart? Was it for whom I turned into this way? Do you have no shame? I didn't ask you to save me. It was your own wishful thinking. Maybe I would have been fine without you. Why do I have to work like a horse for you? Don't forget who arranged your job. I owe you nothing, Max." Max was scolded by her, feeling angry and anxious. He tried to reach out to point at her in anger, but could only flail his empty sleeves and almost trip over a chair in front of him. From a distance, I looked at Max, at the boy who had once been called a genius by his teachers, standing desolately in the middle of everyone, silently enduring humiliation and deception. I couldn't bear to watch, so I lowered my gaze. A person only understands the value of something after losing it. Otherwise, no matter what, one cannot fully comprehend it. Just like Sophie, who was always protected and would never understand what she would become without Max. And just like Max, he would never understand what he would face now if I hadn't intervened. So, he didn't appreciate me back then, just like how Sophie doesn't appreciate him now. The rehearsal schedule was disrupted that day. After everyone left, I stayed behind to continue practicing the movements. In the short film, I portrayed a martial artist emerging from the mountains, needing to showcase fencing moves at the end of the film. However, after being reborn, my moves were rusty, so I practiced repeatedly. Later, when the lights on the stage went out, I was practicing thrusting the sword in the dim light, but suddenly noticed a blurry figure sitting in the audience below the stage. Who? I was startled, and the sword almost slipped from my hand. You're very talented. It was Jake. He raised an eyebrow, his pitch-black pupils seeming ghostly. Max doesn't deserve you. I thought he was warning me not to speak out of turn, so I brought up the matter before he could. I won't tell anyone about you and Sophie. He chuckled, his eyebrows and eyes softening, somewhat intoxicated as he leaned closer to me. Sophie isn't right. I want an actress like you. She's too delicate. You're tough like wild grass. I smelled the scent of perfume mixed with alcohol on him and furrowed my brow, taking 2 steps back. Jake considered himself a great artist, and with his unusual background, he always flirted recklessly. Those girls might each have their intentions, silently enduring his advances. But I shot him a cold glance and took 2 steps back. Who I'm with is my own business, and it's none of your concern. I took off my costume and wanted to leave, but Jake caught up with me and grabbed my sleeve. Ella, has anyone ever told you how different you are? If we were together, do you think Max would be very upset? Do you want to see him come back and pursue you? I admit that for a moment, I did feel a twinge of excitement, but I quickly suppressed the thought. I don't need a man's pursuit to prove my charm, nor do I need a man's regret to show that I'm good enough. My perfection doesn't need any man or woman to enhance it. I don't want any association with Max anymore. If you bother me again, I will reveal everything I know, and it won't benefit you. I coldly took off my costume, turned, and walked out of the theater. After that day, Max started a cold war with Sophie. He no longer came to the theater to see her, nor did they appear together at school. He thought this was punishing Sophie, but he didn't realize that this was exactly what she wanted. On my birthday, Mia rallied the entire drama group to celebrate for me. That day at the restaurant, I received a nameless text message. Little Ella, happy birthday. I instinctively thought of Max. In the first love letter he wrote to me at 17, he addressed me like this, but without much hesitation, I pressed the delete key. Leaving the restaurant, I was surrounded by a crowd as I walked back to school. I was a bit tipsy, and a few boys by my side tried to reach out and support me several times, but hesitated and withdrew their hands. I noticed it without saying a word. When we reached the streetlight, I saw a tall, slender figure standing forlornly. The other boys beside me noticed first and silently walked further away. Ella. Max's voice was extremely restrained, but I could still sense his fluctuating emotions. Happy birthday! After a very brief conversation, I nodded. Thank you. He held an ugly paper star in his left hand. It was poorly folded. Whenever he took a step forward, I would take a step back. The howling wind blew, scattering the paper stars all over the ground, and neither of us bothered to pick them up. I'm going to Beijing to get fitted for a prosthetic limb, he said with a hint of resignation in his voice. During our 4 years together, I never missed any of his major events. I was always by his side during his tough times. When he injured his arm falling off his bike in our sophomore year, blood stained his shirt red. But he silently brought me the birthday cake he had prepared, and as I rolled up his sleeve, the boy who was a head taller than me blinked back tears. The once proud person looked utterly pathetic in front of me, but now, in such a tough moment, I won't be there to accompany him anymore. Good luck, I said coldly, without a trace of a smile on my face. Ella, why are you so heartless to me? Can't we even be friends? A few people nearby glanced over with a questioning look in their eyes. I looked at him firmly and said, Max, don't call me that way. You don't deserve it. You think you can rekindle the old flame, but it's just your desire for warmth from me after being rejected and neglected. But you should know I can't tolerate any hint of betrayal. When you insisted on letting me go, you should have understood that we can't be friends anymore. Don't try to use your so-called deep emotional act to manipulate me, Max. Fate is fickle, fortunes change, that's your choice, and you'll have to bear it yourself. I smiled at him, then turned and walked away, joining my friends as we headed off into the distance. The days leading up to graduation always fly by. With each passing rehearsal, a month had already gone by without me realizing it. Jake started sending me expensive gifts every now and then, sometimes a luxurious ring from a designer brand in my backpack, sometimes a hard-to-find limited edition dress. I knew it wasn't love at first sight, just a game Jake played in his leisure time. I paid no mind, as I had received an offer from the provincial team coach to start coaching. As planned, I would be training the newly formed fencing team, and in 3 months, we would be heading to an important competition. On Sophie's birthday, Max suddenly returned. He and his mom came together, with Max already wearing a new prosthetic arm. They had deliberately chosen this day to come as a surprise to Sophie and hopefully break the ice. Max's mom took the initiative to tell me about it, looking much more tired after all the upheaval, and surprisingly gentle towards me. Ella, Max is like a kid who never grows up, always needing someone to worry about him. You've known him for so many years, you understand him. Underneath his impulsiveness, he's very nostalgic. In our past lives, she had said similar things to other women countless times. Its meaning was clear. On hearing it now, it made me sick. No one is a kid who never grows up. He is a grown man and should take responsibility for his actions. Whether he's nostalgic or not has nothing to do with me. He has a girlfriend now. You should talk to her about it. I said, trying to leave, but Max's mom stopped me. Auntie cares about you and is willing to matchmake you too. Otherwise, as you also know, he is in a good relationship with the girl now, and he has found a job. To be blunt, if Max didn't lose an arm, it wouldn't be your turn. As soon as she mentioned her son, she still had a proud tone. It seemed like Max hadn't told his mom about using his connections to find a job or his arguments with Sophie. Max's mom didn't even like me. She just felt Sophie was not obedient enough. So she wanted me to take over this mess. In the previous life, I experienced how difficult she can be. I'm a bit curious now, wondering what kind of sparks will fly when the princess who can't stand any grievances and Sophie, the rich girl, collide. I wish them success, okay? I hope they have a long and harmonious relationship. You don't need to try so hard to matchmake us. I'm not worthy of your precious son. Max's mom snorted coldly, grabbed her backpack in a huff, and was about to leave, but as her hand reached in front of my eyes, I noticed her fingers were round like drumsticks, a clear sign of clubbed fingers. It seems her heart problem is quite serious now. So I immediately held back my words, afraid that saying anything too harsh might upset her. Mom, come quick, let's go find Sophie. As she opened the door, Max's voice came from the hallway. Then a group of people joyfully chatted and laughed. And I closed the door, squatting down quietly to organize the props. Mia said Max booked a big restaurant. So many people from both crews went there to join the fun. I naturally didn't participate, so I packed up and left. Nowadays, I have to go to the provincial team to conduct training every day, so I don't have time to listen to these news stories. However, as I walked to the school gate, I saw an ambulance rushing in, and a group of students ran in small groups towards the performing arts building. Hurry, hurry! I heard a senior from the acting department was caught cheating by her boyfriend. Later, Mia told me about what happened. She said a group of people eagerly pushed open the dressing room door, expecting to see Max and his mom, but instead found Sophie and Jake in a disheveled state embracing each other. She dramatically said, the two were in a compromising position, not knowing what was going on. Seeing Max in shock and speechless when he witnessed the scene, Max's mom got even angrier. She rushed up to grab Sophie's hair and hit her, but Sophie kicked her in the chest and knocked her down. Max joined the scuffle and grappled with Jake. All of this was captured by someone in the crowd holding a camera as a surprise. I waved my hand, signaling I didn't want to hear more, but Ella continued. It's not over yet. Amid the pushing and shoving, someone pushed Sophie to the ground, and she bled. It's not over yet. Amid the pushing and shoving, someone pushed Sophie to the ground, and she bled. It turns out Sophie was 3 months pregnant, but now she lost the baby. I wonder how it will all end up. Calculating the days, Max and Sophie hadn't been together for 3 months. I wonder what kind of emotions Max, who didn't know this news, would be feeling. Max's mom also ended up in the hospital. Her heart condition worsened to the point of nearly losing her life. She's still in the ICU. Ella, you're lucky. Breaking up with Max was the right move. Don't get involved in their mess. You're lucky. Max was smooth sailing with you, but he didn't know how to appreciate it. He deserves what he's going through now. Mia continued enthusiastically, although her words were a bit extreme. I knew she was completely standing up for me. Okay, Mia, let's not mention Max again. He's just an ordinary person I've known for a while now. Let me show you the girl from our team the day before yesterday. See how gracefully she performs. I took out my phone, showing a girl with polio who had lost both legs, holding a sword high and elegantly striking her opponent with a deadly blow. Before coming to the training, she almost succumbed to the pressure from her parents and was about to marry a deaf husband she had never met. But this skill allowed her to boldly say no to her bullying family. Ella, you're amazing! Mia watched with teary eyes and hugged me tightly. When I become a director in the future, I will definitely make a movie about your story. The graduation assessment arrived as scheduled. Mia's short film was a success. At the end, a group of girls held hands tightly and recited loudly, "I am a high mountain." In the midst of those reciting voices, I put on my fencing gear and showcased my swordsmanship on stage. Among the flowing robes, I seemed to see a speeding car and a woman sitting in a wheelchair, tearful and despairing, singing softly, "Save me! Who can save me?" Across the eternal time of no reunion, I answered her question. "I will save you. I can save you." Then the traffic noise ceased. The distended belly returned to normal. I grew back my legs and stood up again, pulling myself to safety amidst the rolling dust. In this reincarnation, I will love myself well. In the audience, applause thundered. I saw Max sitting among the crowd, crying uncontrollably. The first person to stand up and present flowers was Jake. He approached me holding a bunch of roses that almost completely hit him. "Ella, you look beautiful today." Written at the center of that bouquet shone brightly. "Ella, I like you," but I didn't respond. In the end, Mia, as the organizer, accepted the flowers on my behalf and politely thanked him. "Thank you for your support." As I packed my belongings backstage, a figure stood at the door, staring straight at me. It was Max. He came over struggling and opened his arms towards me. "Ella, we're about to graduate. Can I hug you?" We both knew that after this period ends, we will never have a chance to meet again in this lifetime. I saw the section of his mechanical arm peeking out of his cuff, and finally, I softened a bit. "Ella, be happy." His voice choked up. In this lifetime, this became his way to say it to me. It's funny how fate twists and turns, making things strangely interesting. What if you could have pulled me back when I rushed in? I would have realized my mistake. "Ella, I'm sorry, I was wrong." Max's lips trembled slightly as he lowered his head, tears falling to the ground. I chuckled. "Max, being too cowardly to admit one's mistakes is despicable. If you don't regret, I can still respect you a little. You don't need my forgiveness because you're not important to me, just as I am not to you. It's lucky for us that we'll never see each other again in this lifetime." I packed my bags and left the rehearsal room. This time, all my dark past should be over. After leaving school, I rarely paid attention to news about those people. It was Mia who later told me about Max's mom bleeding profusely during surgery, Sophie causing a scene at Max's house, and Max being unable to pay for the surgery after losing his job and borrowing money from classmates. Only Jake kept messaging me repeatedly, almost non-stop, greeting me and telling me he had broken up with Sophie, asking if I wanted to be the leading lady in his movie. I never replied. In my eyes, men like him who try to use money and power to control others are not impressive, but rather disgusting. I was busy coaching the team members for the competition, exhausted day and night. With the competition just 10 days away, I led the team on a bus to the venue. Disability sports often require more time to adapt to the venue, so I was particularly worried during the journey, fearing a call from Mia, out of the blue. "Ella, have you seen the hot search?" Mia's urgent voice hung up the phone, and a video was sent to me. The video showed Max's mom yelling at me in the hospital on the day of the quake. The video was edited to show only the part where Max's mom accused me of not helping. My indifferent expression was enlarged and turned into a GIF, with a caption implying I had nothing to do with life or death. My identity was exposed, along with the entire team I was coaching. Uninformed netizens made fierce comments. How can someone who can't even save people around them have compassion for disabled people? Is she doing this on purpose? After all, she's the coach for the disabled sports event. Isn't she happy to have more disabled people? They should be disqualified from the competition. How can a team led by such an unscrupulous coach participate? The attacks from netizens shifted from me to the entire team, and finally to the members of my team. "Did you offend someone?" How did this video come out so conveniently? Clearly, this is targeting you. Ella's words helped me regain my composure. I immediately opened a certain social media platform to find the original video. Under the repost of the initiator, I found a familiar profile picture. The reason it was so memorable was that in the previous life, Jake had used this profile picture to post a dynamic message that crushed Sophie. It was Jake, I thought. As I said this, I shivered violently. If I didn't agree to him, it was hard to imagine how the situation could escalate. But it was a critical time for everyone, and I didn't want to jeopardize the competition that everyone had prepared so meticulously for because of my personal grievances. But I also cared about my own feelings. This was a project I had been looking forward to for a long time, and a position I believed I was qualified for. I didn't want to give up easily. Turkey. Ella, have you thought about the source of the video? Mia's words reminded me that day. I tried to recall. My memory was fuzzy, but besides Max and Mrs. Lee, there seemed to be no one familiar to me there. It had been so long since this incident happened. Unless someone familiar with me deliberately leaked it, no one would think of it as a threat. So who was this person after all? After pondering for a moment, I dialed Max's phone number. Ella. He spoke first, his voice urgent. It wasn't me who sent out the video. His excessive urgency to conceal only made me more suspicious. It was your mom, wasn't it? After asking this question, I felt a chill in my heart. With no response for a long time, I already had the answer in my mind. Ella, I'm sorry. She has become like this. I can't blame her anymore. I'm willing to take all the consequences. I'll go explain now. I will clarify everything. Is that okay? I sneered. In what capacity would he explain, and how would he prove his identity? By the time he explained the truth, it might lead to irreparable consequences. Where is the full video? Can you find the full video? At the moment, only by making Max's explanation in the complete video public could the disputes among netizens be ended quickly and effectively. Jake bought the video. He paid for all the surgery fees. So now only he has the right to release the full video. Max's voice, once so appealing to me, now sounded so heartless. My phone slipped from my palm and fell to the ground. The provincial team urgently contacted my superiors. The head coach called me, and I thought I would receive a scolding. But the other party spoke very gently. Ella, don't worry, we are working on a solution. In my mind, the day at the audition site, when I said to her, fate should not be a barrier to pursuing dreams. My team members had gone through so many hardships, and for many of them, this competition was seen as the only chance in their lives. If they couldn't win prizes to enter the national competition, they would only face the outcome of going back home to get married. This was not just about my dream, but also about everyone's dream. Did I really want to let Jake destroy all this? Blame me. Let me give up my coaching position and let the children compete normally. After the competition, let's think of a solution. But I knew that once I compromised, it would be a stain on my career, and it wouldn't be easy to make up for it later. Facing such a dilemma, I quickly packed up and called Mia. Mia, where are you? I need to find you. Before I could finish my sentence, Mia screamed. Ella, it's reversed. Check the hot search. The full video was released and quickly shot to the top of the local trending list. Max's tearful explanation and the public's condemnation were all exposed in the video, causing a sudden shift in public opinion towards Max and the mysterious Sophie. Within half an hour, the trending topic was completely taken down, as if neatly resolved. Soon, a bland entertainment news replaced it as the headliner. I couldn't bring myself to believe that no one was behind manipulating the situation. If Sophie's true identity were to be exposed, finding Jake wouldn't be difficult. So perhaps Jake didn't want the situation to escalate further. However, who was the mastermind behind releasing the full video to land a blow on Jake? I didn't know. After this incident, Jake never contacted me again. The competition was in full swing, and all these events seemed like minor side notes in the process. The subsequent developments went smoothly, and the team I led performed exceptionally well in the provincial competition, with the top 3 spots all taken by my team. The girls shone in front of the flashing lights, pushing wheelchairs, embracing each other, and smiling with the song Under the Vast Sky playing. Due to the minor hiccup before the competition, more people paid attention. The girl from the mountains won the championship, and soon some advertising companies contacted her, promising to cover all her future training expenses. Amidst the cheers and applause of the crowd, I received a phone call. As I pressed the dial button, an unexpected voice sounded in my ear. Ella, you're really amazing. The voice was distant yet familiar, instantly bringing my memories back to a past life. In that dim hospital room, the TV on the wall played a breaking news story. I suffered from severe insomnia, night after night, barely able to sleep, on the brink of collapse and despair, until one evening, listening to a resolute and gentle female journalist reporting a piece of news on television, I found some peaceful drowsiness lying in bed. During those trying days, I found solace in falling asleep to that voice. Later, during those unbearable days, I got used to having that voice lull me to sleep, until the day they showed her face in a breaking news story, claiming that a journalist responsible for post-disaster interviews had died after falling from the 17th floor of a hospital. The asserted cause of death was an overwhelming despair triggered by witnessing too many earthquake survivors' injuries. They played snippets of her pre-death interview segments, each time she spoke with unwavering assurance and optimism. I never knew what happened to her that led to her sudden death by falling from the building overnight, but I felt that something was off about the whole incident. Now, hearing that familiar voice again, tears welled up in my eyes. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop. Did you release the full video? Jane in front of me, with her round face, overlapped with the corner of the camera lens from that day when Max's mom pulled it. I did. Her voice was as soothing as ever, flowing like a gentle stream. Why did you help me? Considering that Jake could release evidence to blackmail me, he must have ensured that all key pieces of evidence were in his hands, which could only be achieved through money or power. As a journalist, she would probably be eager to leverage her evidence to gain more connections and resources in the media industry. Even if not, there was no need to take the risk of crossing him to help me. My daughter is paralyzed. She lowered her head slightly, a hint of blush in her eyes, as she began to tell her story. On the day of the quake, we were supposed to go to the park together, but I had to go outside for a last-minute assignment, leaving her with my husband at home. Later, she got her legs crushed by a fallen pillar. What about your husband? He was with someone else in a hotel downstairs, which I found out later. In my mind, I thought of the hospital she fell from in the previous life, guessing it was likely where her daughter received treatment. My daughter loves to dance, and her teacher said she's talented. I wanted to recommend her to the best dance school. Her voice choked up. She's so young. How can she handle all this? She resisted treatment, and her condition remained poor until she looked up at me. During the post-disaster reconstruction, I attended the job fair at your school. I heard what you said, and I told her about it and showed her a video of wheelchair fencing. That night, she cried for a long time. The next morning, she told me, Mom, I can still dance in a wheelchair. Accompanying her words was a letter she had already written. I raised my head in astonishment, mouth gaping open. If it weren't for you, she might have died. If she wasn't in this world, I didn't know if I had the courage to live on. The black and white photos from the previous life seemed to be right in front of me, causing a shiver in my heart. I never imagined so many things happened to me without me knowing. Jake contacted me, demanding a high price for a video, but I told him the camera was broken. That day, and I didn't record anything. She was dealing with her daughter's serious illness and a divorce lawsuit with her ex-husband. Facing these heavy difficulties, she inevitably needed a large sum of money, which she didn't mention, but I knew. If it weren't for you, I don't know what kind of person I would be, she said, her words firm and powerful. I used to blame myself, thinking I wasn't good enough to keep my husband, and that's why my daughter suffered so much. But as you said, we are mountains, not streams. So, why should we stop for small setbacks? What I should do is make him pay the price. If your story must have a savior with a reversal ending, I hope it's a woman. Why should we always be fools fighting for men? Our swords can also point to cowards, she said before leaving. When the entertainment news exploded, I was attending a celebration for the fencing team. This time, Jake was the one who rose to the top. The explosive news turned out to be the video filmed during Sophie's birthday. In the video, the disheveled two figures hastily separated, followed by a confused Max holding flowers. The relationships among the three were discussed repeatedly, escalated, and eventually sparked public outrage. I don't know how Nina got hold of this video from Jake's good friend, but I know betrayers will eventually be betrayed, and those who gather for their own benefit will eventually disperse when the benefits run out. It's a cycle of nature. Sophie's acting career hit a snag right at the beginning. As netizens compared her to the girl in the video, it took them a while to confirm it was her. It wasn't until I saw her recent photo that I realized the stunning beauty she once had was gone. When there's no turning back from a situation, even her agent publicly stated that after Ella's heartbreak, she continuously underwent cosmetic procedures, and after several failures, the natural beauty she once had is completely gone. In her early 20s, her face is now frozen and unrecognizable. Without that face, she has become a fallen star in disgrace. Even the remarks she made in private with a friend were exposed. Max, I was just playing with him. If I didn't show him any real interest, how would Jake know I was upset? It was revealed. I don't know if Max follows entertainment news or what his reaction will be when he hears this voice message. The whole incident ended with the revelation of tax evasion by the investors behind Jake. It is said that the moral high ground figure is continually caught in extramarital affairs, and he is now awaiting the legal consequences brought by his own ex-wife. We will continue to follow the further development of the situation. This is Nina, your reporter, signing off. At the end of the news, a familiar voice echoes in my ear. The woman's voice is uplifted, delicate, yet emancipated. Years have passed since I last saw Mia after studying abroad to avoid being pressured into marriage by her family. She accidentally became a successful director while trying to prove herself through acting. She found me and informed me that the movie based on my life story was in the works. Many talented directors emerged from their generation, but Jake, who was once so renowned, has tragically fallen, now completely forgotten by the industry. Mia asked if there were any lines I wanted to keep, and I wrote one for her. Many years ago, a person gave up on themselves. He told me that fate is predetermined. Wealth and honor are heaven's decree. But I want to tell you that as long as you don't give up, your fate is in your own hands. I told Mia that I wanted the first group of students I taught to be the inspiration for her film. The one skinny and dark girl from back then is now a champion in the Paralympic Committee. Every year after each competition, she would send me a photo. The girl in the photo had shed her awkwardness, smiling vibrantly. It was a beauty that surpassed Sophie, a vitality-filled beauty. Mia invited most of the students I taught to participate in this performance. Those girls said I was their savior, that I had saved many self-destructive people. I unexpectedly empathized with them, giving many people the courage to face life. But no one knew that my initial wish was just to save myself. But at midnight, I heard the words of the woman in the wheelchair. She said, "You are one in a million." When a person tries to save themselves, to love themselves, they radiate a courage they never imagined they had. This kind of power is what the world needs for a person to become the main character in their own life. I'm grateful that this time I became the main character in my own world.